Hey everybody, welcome back to World History. So today we're going to do section 3. You'll get some more time to work on your review guide. There is a proxy war reading you're going to do, and on our schedule, keep working on your research paper as well. Our learning objectives today are to explain the events surrounding Mao Zedong's rise to power, as well as to analyze the Korean War. So go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. So to kind of pick back up where we left with China, remember we left off with Mao and the communists doing the Long March going into the mountains and Japan invading. Well, after World War II, those tensions are going to, reassert themselves, and we'll have the Chinese Civil War, the communists versus the nationalists. The communists will win, being led by Mao Zedong. Reasons for their victory include that he had won the support of China's peasant population, excuse me, as well as the communists redistributed land to the poor peasants and ended the oppression by the landlords. By 1959, um, the Chinese communists are going to conquer Tibet as well. Their popularity with the peasants and land redistribution there also was very popular. They also ended oppression from the landlords and decreased taxes on the poor. The Chinese government was discouraged popular religions in East Asia like Buddhism and Confucianism, and the government's going to take property from the landlords and business owners. Some Chinese middle class citizens were opposed to this revolution, and typically they were beaten or sent to labor camps, or in some cases killed. They're also going to, as a result, following the war, build dams and factories and really work on the idea of collectivization, or pooling peasant land and labor resources to increase productivity, to mixed results. So from 1958 to 1960, Mao is going to put forward a program called the Great Leap Forward. This is designed to increase productivity and output. It urged people to increase their farming efforts and set up communes. However, it's a massive failure. There's no individual incentive to do a good job, there's less production, massive famine, and 55 million people will starve to death as a result of this failure. By 1966, there was a further plan to purge China of their bourgeois tendencies and encourage younger generations to experience the revolution for themselves. So we have kind of an elite group known as the Red Guards that forms. This is a group of teenagers that attacked those that they considered to be bourgeois. They carried little red books that had quotations from Chairman Mao in them and really ushered in a new era of the revolution. So China is really the Cold War's wild card. The Chinese and the Soviets were loose allies. The really only thing that connected them was that they were both communist. There was a lot of mistrust between the two and a few border disputes. By 1960, the Soviets withdraw all aid from China. As a result, the US sees this as an opportunity to use China to further isolate the Soviet Union. There were some strategic advantages to improving relations with communist China. By using, to coin a phrase that was popular at the time, playing the China card, it was a strategy the US could use to isolate the Soviets between NATO in the West and a hostile China in the East. By 1971, they allowed China to replace Taiwan in the United Nations, and in 1979, for the first time in decades, the US set up formal diplomatic relations with China, something that hadn't happened in a really long time. So, moving on to talk about the Korean War. After World War II, the Soviets and the Americans were in agreement to divide Korea temporarily along the 38th parallel of latitude. Remember that it was land that was conquered and captured by the Japanese. North Korea will be set up and ruled by dictator Kim Il-sung, a communist ally of the Soviet Union, while the south part of Korea would be backed by the United States and led by non-communist leader Syngman Rhee. In early 1950, the communist North Korean army is going to attack in a surprise run and overrun most of South Korea. The UN Security Council condemned the invasion, and the US organized a UN force to help South Korea. It's important to understand that the Korean War is a stalemate. There's really no clear winner. By 1953, both sides signed an armistice to end the fighting, and 2 million North Korean and South Korean troops remained dug in on either side of the DMZ, or the demilitarized zone. This is an area with no military forces near the 38th parallel, so really they just went back to where it was before. The armistice will hold for the rest of the Cold War, and technically speaking, no peace treaty has ever been negotiated. So literally they could resume hostility tomorrow, and it would still be the same war, because there was no official end to the war declared. So looking at North Korea, Kim Il-sung is going to utilize that command economy And by the late 1960s, their economic growth is going to slow. Kim's emphasis on self reliance kept North Korea isolated and poor. Really, if we had to identify the most communist country in the world still today in 2024, when I'm recording this, it's North Korea. The government's going to build a personality cult around Kim, constantly glorifying him as the great leader. By the 80s, economic reform for Soviet and Chinese allies saw North Korea cling to hardline communism while they made reforms. And South Korea successfully transitioned to a democracy. Two very different versions of Korea exist today. All right, that's it for notes for today. I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.